Greetings, Rob Simpson here, Simmer with a Kraken Knuckleheads, and holy moly, some breaking news as we get fired up here to start a conversation with the great Pete Weber of the Nashville Predators. We got Jim Montgomery being fired as the head coach of the Boston Bruins. That's a bummer. I love talking to Monty. Of course, won a national championship with Maine back in 1993 with Paul Kariya. So that's obviously huge. Probably saw that coming the way the Bruins had been playing so far this season. Of course, in fact, the loss to the Blue Jackets on Monday night was the final straw. More locally, Vancouver, JT Miller is given a indefinite leave of absence from the team for personal reasons. It doesn't look like it's anything uh, other than just needs a little time off. That's the feeling everyone is projecting at this moment. And then Connor Garland looks like he'll also miss the game against the New York Rangers on Tuesday night because his wife is having a baby. So congratulations in advance. So you will have seen or you'll be getting ready for the New York Rangers game against Vancouver, depending on when you see this. And you'll likely be getting ready for the Predators and the Kraken on Wednesday evening. I'll be there as you watch this. So we'll get into it with Pete. Great stories. He's the Tennessee Sportscaster of the Year again. We used to work in Seattle. Interesting little background here. You'll be curious to learn. And also with the Buffalo Sabres for a while as well. Some good stories there coming up. We'll get you ready. It's Pete Weber, the great Pete Weber, right now. Yes, indeed. It is the great Pete Weber right there on your screen. Mr. Weber, how the heck are you?
Doing very well and hope I'm not scaring any youth.
No, you're not scaring any youth. I like the archive. The secret door to the archive behind you is open. I wonder what's going
Yes,
to walk out of there.
you never know. I mean, it could be almost anything. It could be Buffalo Sabres history. It could be Los Angeles Kings history, things like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, but I want to start somewhere else. For the people in the lower mainland of BC and, of course, the Cascade region of the Pacific Northwest, what was your connection to the Seattle Supersonics?
I did their play-by-play on the old Sonic Super Channel in the 81-82 season. And how long ago was that? Well, when I left Los Angeles, Nick Nixon took my position, and now he's retiring at the end of this season. So
Okay.
that was a heck of a long time ago, and Nick has had a great career. Nick, you're welcome.
Nick, who was just on here about, I'd say 3 weeks ago. We call this Kraken Knuckleheads. He was a guest, of course, a Foster Hewitt. I was at his Foster Hewitt luncheon a few years ago. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool talking to Nick. That's interesting. The small hockey world never ceases to amaze. Where did you live in Seattle?
I lived in Bellevue on 146th Street, very close to the Sonics Racket Club, and where we practiced quite a bit. And then we all just took our ride out to SeaTac Airport and parked at the Red Roof Inn, as I recall, that we got our clearance to do that and then take the shuttle over to the airport.
Nice. All right, Pete. Well, your current team, the Nashville Predators, will be visiting the Seattle Kraken on Wednesday night. You're not doing the road games this year. You're taking her easy, which is just fine and dandy. But of course, you're following the team religiously and in detailed fashion.
It is a
Um,
religious experience, yes.
it is. Let's talk about the slow start first. I think people expect snap your fingers, Steven Stamkos, and light it up immediately. People get all antsy pantsy in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. They're starting to come around, and I would think the win in Vancouver was a confidence boost.
I don't think there's any question about that, particularly when you consider they were the team that knocked the Predators out of the playoffs last spring.
Yeah.
And being able to beat that club, granted, and last spring it wasn't Thatcher Demko wasn't a big factor. It was Shelofs who was playing so well in goal in that opening round anyway. And but no Brock Besser right now, and so on. So we always take these things into account because I was thinking what it was like last year when the Predators started out 5-10.
Yeah.
And then out of that dime store record, they go into the month of February, get defeated by Dallas 9-2. The team cancels a concert for the team, a concert appearance in Las Vegas at Sphere to be able to see what ABBA, and that all of a sudden changed into a 17 game or an 18 game unbeaten string straight
Yeah.
out after that. Cause and effect, I don't know, but I think Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette are looking for a concert they could possibly cancel right now.
That might have been Philip Forsberg's idea, the ABBA thing, right?
Oh, there's no question. No question. He had heavy influence on that one.
Yeah. Speaking of Andrew Brunette, the Predators family, it's something else. And we're going to get to these individuals here in a second. But Andrew Brunette, he scored the first ever Predators goal, did he not?
Yes, he did. And I didn't get to call it because it was held up by video review. And it was a different sort of review at that point in time. The ruling was, had the net not been knocked off its pegs, it would have gone in. We don't have that anymore. But that was the first goal in Predators history, and it came against the Carolina Hurricanes in game number 2.
Remember who the goalie was?
It should, let me see, it should have been Artur Zerbe.
I was going to say the little guy.
Yeah.
What do we think of Bruno's efforts now? Second full season underway.
I've enjoyed working with him. I think he's got a very sound approach. He just has, shall we say, a disparate group right now. And the key word he's using is connected or not connected. And that's what has concerned him more than anything. But right now it is looking like Steven Stamkos has gotten pretty connected. So now awaiting Jonathan Marchessault. And Brady Shea is having the same sort of early season that Roman Josi did last year, the first months under a new defensive system. And he's coming from Carolina where they played man. And now into the zone that Andrew Brunette wants to work with. And just going to take, I hope it's not much longer for him to become more accustomed to it.
He's been using Stammer. I mean, I heard, who was it today? I think this morning I was speaking to somewhere, referred to Stamkos kind of as a power play specialist. And he has started to crank
Yes.
it up on the power play lately. At 5-on-5, I know Bruno's been juggling lines a little bit, but does the talent match Stammer? Let's say, I don't know, I remember if Marchessault was on the other wing at some point, but he's got Sissons and Evangelista. Is it just kind of experimenting? Is there enough talent through the depth chart to kind of complement Stamkos?
What most people on the outside have been saying is the team needs a bona fide number 2 center.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of it all, though Colton Sissons has been a remarkable Swiss Army knife type of forward for the club to use. And sometimes versatility doesn't help a player necessarily.
Yeah.
So let's see what develops here as the Preds go to the Climate Pledge Arena for the game coming up Wednesday night.
Yeah, especially the jack of all trades doesn't necessarily work out. As you pointed out, top 2 centers are so important, and they
Right.
to be able to light things up. And
I think we're seeing that in Boston right now, are we not?
seeing it in Boston, and the Kraken have seen it as well in terms of just getting productivity near the top of the lineup. They've moved some centers in and out of those positions up there. It's the same thing. What all contributed aside from the adjustments made to the roster and the new faces? What do you think was kind of off to the slow start? We're not going to blame this on goaltending.
We can't
No.
because Juuse Saros has been a strong candidate for MVP of the whole hockey club. He is sort of like hockey's version. You remember Marvin Webster, who was called the human eraser in his days in the NBA?
Yep.
Well, Juuse he's kind of like been Mr. Whiteout, if you will, in getting rid of some of the mistakes, but he has been left, as they like to say about goaltenders, out to dry so frequently over the course of these first 20 games that it's putting his record in a bad light, which, according to the way he has played, does not deserve.
Yeah, I was going to say his numbers are still in this day and age pretty strong. He's got a 914 save percentage, 2.55 goals against average, but this right now that's like somewhere in the 15 to 20 range rank wise in the National Hockey League. So somebody looks at that and they go, "Oh my God!" But the numbers aren't that shabby, and he's as you just pointed out, has had to put up with a lot, right?
Yeah, an awful lot. I'm always sorry to see that, but if it weren't for him, the team would probably be quite a bit more than 4 games below break even right now.
Right. By the way, last summer at the draft in Nashville, I was having a cold frothy with Skillsy, and
Yes.
he
He
I went,
doesn't, he had a cold frothy.
yeah, and he just
Okay.
happened to be standing next to Pekke Rinne
Yeah.
when I popped up. It's weird because I thought I'd interviewed everybody, but I don't think I had ever really talked to Pekke Rinne, and that might have just been because of all the morning skates I used to go to in Toronto and New York. We
Yeah.
always used to leave the goalies alone, whether they minded
Yes.
or not. I'd always leave them alone. So that might have been it. But what a great gentleman he is.
Is he ever? And he's comparably, I know about leaving goaltenders alone during morning skate. Had that a little bit in LA with Rogie, and certainly had it with Mike Dunham in the early years here. But Thomas Faucon, Pekka Rinne, no problem whatsoever.
Same with
Let's
Eddie
talk.
Balfour.
Oh,
I remember,
yeah, there you go.
yeah,
And getting the stories about Eddie Belfour that I would get from his former backup, Dominic Hasek.
yeah. I talked to him at was joking with him at the Hall of Fame induction party, like not this last one, the one before. It was the same deal. He was posing with the Stanley Cup or something. I chatted, said, "This is the first time I got a chance to talk because I was always scared to hell. I was told not to talk to you, and I was scared as hell to talk to you anytime else, at the morning skate. So I avoided you for 2 decades. But
Right, right.
he was great. He was there with his daughter. Speaking of Hall of Fame, Mr. Poile. I'm sure you could go on about this guy. He goes into the Hall as an honored member after his distinguished career. Of course, kind of hand built the Preds.
Not kind of. He definitely
Completely.
did. And
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be at the induction last week of both him and one of his draftees, Shea Weber, who became the first Predators draftee to make the Hall of Fame, following guys who came along a little bit later, like Paul Correa and Peter Forsberg.
Yep.
And I think Philip is on track to make it there too. But just to make sure the Forsberg family is happy. But David Poile, he really had a rough initiation into his National Hockey League general managership. Here he had just been general manager, I think, for a week of the Washington Capitals when he made the huge trade with the Montreal Canadiens, whereby, and for you and I, this probably is more significant, he picked up two color commentators in the deal. He got Brian Engblom and Craig Laughlin. But most importantly, he got Rod Langway out of all of that. And then he was the only Capitals representative at the general managers meetings, and he made that deal with the Canadians. And he called Abe Poland to tell him about the trade, and Abe hung up on him and said, "I hope you know what you're doing. You traded my favorite player, Ryan Walter."
Wow. Ryan Walter.
It worked out okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it worked out all right. Um, what else just jumps out at you about? I mean, obviously, I do remember this, hearing it repeatedly early on, especially when Trotzy was the coach. Oh, they just don't have enough money. I mean, especially up until you got to the lockout. So
Yes.
99 through the '04. It was, yeah, they're good and they're well coached, but they just don't have enough talent and they can't afford it and they're not going to spend the money.
Well, it took 6 years before the team topped 200 goals scored in a season. And I think that's reflective of just what you mentioned. And then all of a sudden, the club began making the playoffs, and it was goaltending and defense, which made all of that possible. And not to mention here's David again, a little trade he made one night when the team was in Columbus, and all of a sudden the locker room just exploded with glee because they found out Steve Sullivan was coming to join the club. And Sullivan, his first game was kind of bad. He only had 3 goals and 2 assists. And all 3 goals on the power play, which had been a very difficult thing for the Predators to try to execute. So David did that deal, and I believe we set it down. And at the Hall of Fame, they said no general manager in the history of the game has made more trades than what David Poile did in 35 years. So not reluctant to
Yeah,
pull the trigger.
good for him. Trotzy's in the position now. Seems,
Right.
again, keeping it in the family type of thing. Is there any? I guess it's kind of too early to evaluate it.
I think that it is, and I think that I like what I have seen of him, and I see him between virtually every intermission because of our special media restroom upstairs after periods, and I'm in there, and I'm usually in there after Barry, who has that quick first step and gets there before I can. We discuss a lot of things at those junctures of the game, and I can tell how well his day is going, but I've never seen him yet get to the point where he's incapable of speech. I think that's a good thing.
By the way, Pete, you mentioned a couple of places. Do we feel bad for Buffalo Sabres fans at this point?
I do. I do. And I'm happy that among the 8 road trips I'm going to go on this year, one of them is Buffalo,
Right.
where my good buddy Rob Ray is going to be inducted into the Sabres Hall of Fame on
Oh,
that
wow.
particular night. So we will bring up his 7 goal bonus clause that he had, and the night that he had the party on the team plane after having achieved that goal. Rob Ray, I'll never forget the night watching here in Nashville where there was a Brian Murray, Lindy Ruff, shall we say, interlude between the benches yelling at each other. And Rob is standing there like this with his hand over the microphone, hoping that that conversation won't get picked up.
Wow. So I'm assuming this would be some type of combo platter for Rob Ray in terms of
Absolutely.
player and
Broadcaster, yes. He, when he is inducted, I'm going to recall for him the night that Seymour and Norty Knox were inducted into the Sabres Hall of Fame, the last year of the odd, before the opening puck hit the ice for the faceoff, he was already involved in a ruckus on the right wing side of the center faceoff circle. Yeah, he was going after it right away. And I've got scores of highlights of him and Ty Domi. You got to talk about this was sort of like Hagler and Hearns and their rematches that they had over the years.
yeah, Domi had a few of those. I'm sure Rob did as well. A couple different legendary Domi Proberts.
Yes,
Rick Jenneret, what was the overlap or what was the relationship with you and him, the legend there in Buffalo?
he was doing TV as I was doing the radio. I was doing the radio from 95 to 97 and hosting the radio for about 6 years prior to all of that. And Rick, what I mean, I know he really couldn't get into the game. He was sort of extremely laid back.
Oh yeah.
And my favorite call that he ever made, I think, Mayday, Mayday, of course, stands out.
Right.
But I think the night that Gilbert Perreault pulled off one of his patented great inside out moves and beat Richard Sevigny. And what did we hear after the goal? Richard Sevigny, where's your jockstrap?
He's a beauty. Well, you're a beauty too, Pete, and we love you taking the time here, and a legend as well. And how many times you've been voted like Tennessee Sportscaster of the Year? It's like 8, 9, 10 times, somewhere in there.
I believe the number is 9, and I'll stick
Nine.
that with Philip Forsberg.
Hey, I always make a big emphasis on you got balls to wear number 9. I mean, because go back in
Yes.
history, when
Oh,
somebody throws on 9, it's like, okay, you got something to live up to here. This is a number. And
the Rocket, Gordy. And here in Nashville, prior was, Paul Correa.
Paul Correa, yeah. All right. I think we're ready to go for the Predators and the Kraken and other things down the line. I think we should circle back with you later in the season, Pete. Who knows?
I'm
Maybe
I'm
kind of like
ripe for that.
kind of like our visit to the Emerald Inn in New York City at 69 Columbus. We might have to find another place to grab something cold, but down the road.
Might have to, and maybe I could find some way to get Skillsy and Pekke there as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Pete. Predators and Kraken Wednesday night at the Climate Pledge Arena. Check out our material at seattlehockeyinsider.com, vancouverhockeyinsider.com, YouTube, this that you're watching right now, along with many, many other fun and entertaining and informative videos. Simmer Puck is the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. And that's also my handle at Threads and also at Twitter/X. It's at Simmer Puck. Have a great day or evening and enjoy the hockey action. See you next time.